Education Secretary has been at her post for all of 3 days, but protesters are already using harassment to keep her from doing her job. We'll find out what's setting them off. Plus, we'll talk to a professor with a novel idea for fixing poverty in this country: give everyone a government job. But first, last week at NYU, rioters shut down a planned speech by Vice co-founder Gavin McInnes. Now, one student there is saying the speech's organizers ought to be punished for this provocation. In a piece written for Washington Square News, that's NYU's student newspaper, grad student Kuras Esmaili says the college Republicans ought to be kicked off campus for inviting McInnes to speak there. McInnes's beliefs, he says, quote, are beyond our sense of democratic values and debate, and therefore ought to be suppressed. Kuras Esmaili joins us tonight from New York. Mr. Esmaili, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker, for having me.
So, because this is kind of the crux of your argument, I want you to be a little more specific for us, if you could. You said that McInnes's point of view is, and I'm quote, beyond our sense of democratic values. What democratic values specifically are you referring to?
First of all, Tucker, I want to thank you very much for having me on. The reason I accepted to come on here is because what I wrote was actually altered and suppressed by the student paper, and I wrote them and they never wrote me back, but it really gave me a sense that I really need to have somewhere to where I can actually say what I believe rather than an editorial that actually decides to tell me, change my words. So I really appreciate the fact that you have me on and you're allowing me to sort of say it from my perspective.
We always do.
And I did some research on you today, and I really understand that you're a free speech fundamentalist. You believe free speech should be open and it should not be curbed at any point. Am I right about that?
I'm an American, but I'm trying to get to the core of your argument, which
see, my argument was suppressed, so I want to sort of like be able to sort of say
tell us, okay, then let's just make this really simple for our viewers who don't know the backstory here. Your op-ed that you wrote for this paper appears to suggest the Republicans at NYU should be sanctioned in some way for daring to have Gavin McInnes on campus, and your justification for that is that his views are so beyond the pale, beyond, as you put it, our democratic values, that we shouldn't be allowed to hear them.
See, Tucker, what I really don't want you to do is do what the student paper at NYU did, which is put words in my mouth and change my words. Let me sort of tell my own story. Is that okay?
Yes, with haste.
So what I'm trying to, one of the sentences that was actually taken out, which made me very angry, was the question: does the university, is it obliged to protect the speech of someone who comes on campus and advocates and recruits for Al-Qaeda?
Okay.
What do you think about that?
I don't know that is at question here. We're talking about Gavin McInnes.
It's exactly the question that I want to raise, which was suppressed. So I'm bringing that question. Another question that was altered is the question: should the university protect someone who comes on campus and advocates vigilante violence against police officers who've killed civilians and have not been indicted? Is that protected? Should that be protected on campus?
That was, I mean, look.
That was suppressed on, by those editors. And I want a place where I can sort of have this conversation. What do you think about this? Should someone who actually advocates killing police officers be allowed to debate on a campus, or no, not even debate, to sort of come on and say what they believe on campus?
If you're asking me a question, then let me answer it.
This is
not a question for college administrators to decide. It's been decided by the Supreme Court in a case called Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969, the last big free speech case. And the upshot of it is that advocating violence is indeed protected speech. And of course, politicians do it all the time. We ought to bomb this country or bomb that country. Advocating violence, that's protected by the First Amendment. What is not protected is inciting violence, imminent violence, destruction, or mayhem. I cannot say, go smash the windows of that liquor store. So here's my point. Anything Gavin McInnes conceivably said or would have said on your campus is protected speech. Now, if you'd taken 10 minutes to Google this, you'd know that. And so there's really not a close call here. What he's doing is protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution. So for you to say that people should be sanctioned,
do you think people should recruit for Al-Qaeda on a college campus?
Well, of course, I'm completely against Al-Qaeda.
Okay, do you think they should be protected by administrators on a campus?
I think people ought to be able to express their political views, no matter how repugnant to you or me or anyone else, as long as they, in accordance with the Supreme Court decision from 1969, are not inciting imminent violence. I believe I'm understanding that correctly, and I think that you should, and I think the college administrators should.
I do believe
understand
that. I absolutely do believe that. But I also believe that there are arguments, there are points to be made that are beyond the pale of responsible dialogue.
Okay.
Right? So, and I think someone coming and saying we should...
name one.
I just did two. both of which were suppressed, that were not allowed to be discussed in that newspaper, but and which you have not really answered my question either. My stand is this. Okay, we do not live in a society in which any speech should or is guaranteed. Okay, so. And I also believe, I was sitting on a subway on the way here, right? And I was sitting on a subway in New York City, and I invite all your listeners to come to and sit in a subway station in New York City, where you sit with a cross-section of humanity that is amazing. And I was wondering, and you know what quote came to my mind? Right? We believe, right, that all men are created equal. This is the founding
You're starting to lose me. You're starting to lose me here, Mr. Ismaili.
Let me get to it. We believe that all men are created equal. When someone likens people of color to monkeys, that resonates for some people to be beyond the pale of acceptable American values, right? Because if our country is based on the idea that we're all equal, then you cannot, right, have an argument about whether some people are below human. That to me is not something that really belongs in a debate on a campus.
You don't like it, and I don't either, and I think that's, you know, an awful sentiment, and I would never defend it. And yet both of us are bound as Americans to defend the right of people to express views that we disagree with, even if we consider them repugnant or wrong. If they are short of inciting imminent violence, we have to say, I disagree with you, here's the counter case, here's why you're wrong, here's why you shouldn't say things like that. But we cannot prevent people from expressing what they believe. That is the essence of our democratic values, the ones you appealed to, and you don't seem to understand that.
So you would stand up for someone who actually wants to recruit for an organization that has said they want to hurt the United States. You would stand up for the right of that person to speak on a college campus. College campuses are not American society. College campuses are specific places where people are debating and talking to each other.
Oh, right? They're debating, except when they disagree with you, in which case you write them out of the protection by saying they're somehow beyond the pale. Now, I'm asked you clearly, what about Gavin McInnes' positions is so far outside the mainstream that it doesn't fall under the First Amendment?
Calling an African American a monkey, that should be on the outside of a sane debate.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not saying
and the point is that if someone like that,
so you're saying
and the point that I made in the editorial is the Republican students need to bring conservative ideas onto campus. We need to know why there should be the deregulation of Wall Street. We need to have a discussion about why there should be deregulation of environmental regulations.
You're conservative? Why is it up to you to define what conservative ideas are?
I believe in real discussion.
But only within your terms.
But the Republican students, instead of bringing that question on campus, they bring someone outside of the pale of any rational discussion who calls,
so I wonder, I'm gonna do
an
irony.
African American a monkey.
Okay,
that's
first
what
of all,
Republican
you
students
keep
bring on
alleging
campus.
that. Hold on, wait, stop. I don't want to get into a defense of a specific writer's writings, but I would actually challenge you to cite chapter and verse on that. I don't believe he actually said that. If he did, obviously I find that repugnant.
There's a link. I put the link where I got that information. There is a link. I mean, listen, you're asking me for chapter and verse. Is a link to him speaking where he likens an actress, a black American actress, to a monkey. And
well, there's literally
no
chance I would defend something like that. But the point is, I would defend the right of anybody to say something I disagree with, and you ought to too, and especially as a college student, and I think you're still a college student.
I'm a graduate student, and I actually
You're
teach.
a graduate student, you teach, then you're in a world that was created specifically to protect people who have non-mainstream opinions.
But that space does not protect everybody. Let's be clear about that.
Apparently it doesn't. It doesn't protect people you disagree with.
Does it protect people who advocate killing cops? Do you think that will go well? If someone wanted to go and speak on a college campus,
first of all,
a tour that said that talked
the time.
Really? I really want to know. I really want to know where there's anybody.
Have you been to a Black Lives Matter protest?
Absolutely not. I support Black Lives Matter. I would never support Black Lives Matter if they advocated killing a police officer.
Really?
And they do not.
I wish we had the tape. We've only played it like 5
That is a distortion.
Okay, but
right. So that doesn't have the point being that your la-la land of college campuses being open to everybody to say whatever they want doesn't exist because we have a criteria, right?
Look,
we believe for 200 years that all men are created equal.
Well,
let me finish this thought.
Yeah.
Okay. People who come out and say, no, some people aren't equal. Women are inferior when it comes to this. Blacks are inferior when it comes to that. Muslims are inferior because people who say that, they go against the grain of a lot of people who get very angry at that.
Be allowed, right? Yeah, people get angry. That's right. And maybe they should get angry.
And that inflames. That takes us outside of a rational rational discussion.
Okay,
right?
so when people
Republican students, if they want to have a rational discussion on campus, they should have us talk about something that matters.
Okay.
Right? Not bring some Yahoo.
Wait, stop, Mr. Ismaili. Can I ask you one last question? We're almost out of time. If I want to know what the new rules are, as created by you, the graduate student, what are the rules for, as you said, rational conversation?
I don't pretend to create rules.
So where can I go on the internet to find out what speech is protected and what speech isn't protected, according to you and your friends at NYU? Is there a website
We don't
that tells
make
me?
rules. I don't pretend to make rules,
you keep
and I don't want to be in a position of being administrator
well,
of a college.
I think
it's a very difficult job. That's not what I want to do.
Okay, but how do I know what the rules
administrators, right, are responsible for the safety of their students on campus. Right, and when someone comes and advocates for this idea, the racist ideas, right, it can hurt people. Right?
Okay,
and the example that I used in my op-ed that you bring up is 2 weeks ago, some guy walks into a mosque, kills 6 people, right? After he heard, and this is documented, after he heard the speech of a far-right politician. Right? So words actually have effect, right?
So if I were to go to a rally and people said, I'm just pulling this out of thin air, pigs in a blanket fry like bacon about police officers advocating the killing of cops. I mean, you would say that's unacceptable. That should not be allowed. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if student group wants to have a discussion about police brutality or racism.
If they were to use that phrase, pigs in a blanket fry like bacon.
I'm not interested in the phrase. I'm not going to debate you over this phrase should be allowed or not.
Because you have no principles. That's why. Because all the things you've been saying for the last 11 minutes are totally untrue.
And I came here because I thought I would get the same respect from you.
You just revealed who you are. Okay, thanks a lot for joining us. No, you shut it down. Wow. This is Fox News Alert. President Trump